comadre. ¿Cómo estás? How are you doing? Val here.
I'm good. And I are trying to figure out our new cute little intro because I don't know, this is fun for us. So we're getting excited and coming up with ideas. So let us know what sounds most natural to you.
Yeah, we'll just greet each other. But
Yeah, there we
we are
go.
back. This is episode 2. And today we're going to talk about our healing era. So, everybody, get your crystals, get your tea, and it is time to
Get your
heal or
birth
talk
charts
about
out.
healing. Your birth charts. Yeah, that's funny. What is it? Any Pisces or Taurus? Maybe any Pisces or
Yeah.
Taurus in the
Leave
audience.
a
Just
comment if you're a Pisces or a Taurus.
other
Actually,
signs, you guys don't. I want to be mean, like other signs don't matter. Just kidding. Just kidding.
we have love in our heart for Scorpio. We do.
Yeah, we do love Scorpios. That's
There's a
true.
very important Scorpio in our life. We should have her on one of these days, actually.
We should. We should
Yeah.
have run. Imagine all that energy. Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
God.
Okay.
That'd be a
Okay.
chaotic episode.
Yeah, it would be. We should make it happen though, just to see for all like all the astro people out there. Just be like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Awesome.
Jenny, when we say our healing era starts now, what do you mean in context to our culture and our community?
Yeah, well, actually, I think we skipped over introductions. If you guys are new here, my name's Jenny, and this is the
And
beautiful
Val.
Val.
Oh,
We're
thanks.
best
Thank you.
friends. We have been best friends since high school, and we started this podcast to try and talk about stuff like this, like mental health, things that are common that our Latino community goes through. I am half Mexican, and Val is first generation Mexican American, so we have a lot
Yeah.
of unique experiences, but we felt very common with a lot of our experiences with one another, and so today we're going to talk about that. So, sorry, what was the question?
Dang, that was beautiful. Man, we should just give like a round of applause to Jenny. Jenny is definitely the Pisces here. So she has a lot more calm
I have a
energy.
lot of
Like, let's
feelings.
talk.
I might cry on
Yeah,
this
like, let's.
episode.
Yeah, who knows? It's funny though, because I'm like, let's talk about healing. And Jenny's like, let's tell people who we are first. I guess to add to what Jenny was saying is we're both psych majors. So I think with like our knowledge in psychology and then just our lived experiences, we have a lot to say. So let's get started. So, setting the tone. You guys, I took notes because I'm a little bit distracted. So when we say our healing era starts now, what does that mean to us in context to our culture and our community?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like emotions are something that is very easily avoided in at least in my family. I know everyone's family is different, but I also see that it's a common thing in a lot of Hispanic families. We've all seen the memes, we've all seen the TikToks. Some of them are
Mm-hmm.
funny, some of them are kind of sad. I'm sure a lot of them are very cathartic and are a great way of coping with a lot of the realities that we face as Latinos. But we wanted to talk about some of the common things that happen when it comes to that emotional avoidance within the Latino community and give you guys tangible ways to kind of make some more progress, whether it's in your own mental health or maybe it's in the dynamic that you have with your parents or your immediate family or extended family, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to go off of what Jenny was saying and why it's important, I would say it's important to any person or people, any culture. I think this is the culture that we're in. We were brought up Latinas, and so we have that shared experience of things that we saw in our household, things that we talked about, and just things that we didn't talk about. And in making that change for ourselves and our future generations, we want to share some of those skills. So, I guess our segment 1 is growing up in the Latino and mental health. What messages did you grow up with hearing in your family about emotions or mental health then? Did you grow up talking about emotions or mental health?
Say as I've gotten older, yeah. Like once I started getting around middle school, high school age, I talked a
Mm-hmm.
lot more about feelings with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a little bit more open with my dad about, I don't necessarily think my own emotions, but
Mm-hmm.
just like the topic of emotions in general. But my dad's white, so that's obviously a different dynamic. My mom is
Mm-hmm.
Mexican, and for her growing up, like emotions wasn't really a priority. And I think so. She grew up with four younger brothers. She's the oldest. And I think for
Mm-hmm.
her, it was a lot of survival mode. And so when she became a
Mm-hmm.
mother, I am very lucky and blessed that she wanted to change a lot of that, but it didn't come right away. And so in terms of immediate family, I think it did get better as time was went on, but
Mm-hmm.
with my extended family, so like my tios, my grandparents, my cousins, whenever I was around them, I was always considered the sensitive one. And so if somebody hurt my feelings or if somebody was a little too rough with me whenever, kids are being kids, we're wrestling, we're roughhousing, we're like, actually, I do remember, this is so random, but there was this one time that we were all like roughhousing at this like family party that we had, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
like grabbed me and like threw me onto the bed, but they threw me a little too far. And I remember I hit my head and it like left a dent in the drywall.
My
So,
God, that's crazy.
yeah. So, I would be crying because of things like that. And it was just like, oh, well, Jenny's too sensitive. Like, you can't be doing that with her. You know what I mean? And then as time went on, I feel like, and now I can look back and laugh at it, but I feel like whenever I was in it as a little kid, it felt very ostracizing because it was like, well, why
Mm-hmm.
isn't anybody else like me? Like, well, actually, I was lucky that one of my other cousins, she was on the same level as I am. She's a very emotionally intelligent person, so her and I could bond. But
Mm-hmm.
when I was really little, like, it was super hard for me in that aspect.
I would say it was pretty relatively similar. For example, I think it was easy to express happy emotions when you're dancing or singing or laughing, but it's like negative emotions when you're sad, like no, don't cry, or like when you're just having a bad day, it's like, oh, just get over it, or like
Right?
it was just like negative emotions were just not very welcomed. I think in
Yeah.
general they tend to make people feel uncomfortable. But I just think my parents didn't have the tools to coach me through them. And it was kind of like, just get over it kind of thing. So it wasn't even like, some emotions were definitely welcomed. And there were other emotions that I just like, we don't want to talk about that.
Or another thing I notice is anger. They're so much more comfortable being angry than they are expressing
Mm-hmm.
that deeper level, which as we know, anger, well, as Val and I know, but you might be learning this for the first time and that's completely okay. Anger is a secondary emotion, so usually what lies underneath that might be feelings like sadness or guilt and so on and so forth. And so that's something that I notice a lot in the Latino community is we're very comfortable being angry and defensive and passionate. Like that's that stigma, right? Is that Latinos are so passionate, but sometimes that can be a negative thing because instead of them getting down to the root of what the issue is, they just are so quick to be fiery and defensive, and then that just can end up causing more conflict in the long run.
Yeah, like masking it. Like you might be feeling sad, but it shows up as anger. Wow, that was beautiful. This is why Jenny and I are friends. Is because
We
I'll
just
be
be
like, oh, I
having
had a bad
epiphanies
day, and
left and
then
right.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in hearing that, I'm like, wow, I just learned so much.
Yeah.
That's funny. So in our households, how are feelings usually handled? I think we kind of already spoke about this. The positive ones were always welcome, laughing, giggling, smiling, just dancing, singing, like all the positive things were always good. And then like the other emotion was either like anger, and it's like, oh no, like my mom's mad or like my brother's mad, like like anger. But sadness was just the one that I think my family was just the most uncomfortable with. Like I don't know why sadness was just like the one that they're like, ugh. Like they would rather be mad than like, because at least when you're mad, it's like you feel like you have some sort of power. But
Yeah.
sadness is just like sad. Like I don't know.
Well, yes, and I know you and I have talked about this before. This is something that both of us have gone through. And actually, I do want to throw this disclaimer because my mom might be watching. I love you, mom. I respect you. I am going to be private. I'm not just going to be throwing out dirty laundry everywhere or anything like that, but I think these are important topics to talk about. And so I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. But something that I experienced growing up, and I know you did too, Val, is the silent treatment. And that has a lot of like what you just said about having control. I think that is like such a
Mhm.
huge thing when it comes to the silent treatment. And the person who is giving that silent treatment, they feel like they're in control because they're like, oh, like I know this person wants to connect with me and this person wants this to be over. And I know this silence is making everybody uncomfortable, but I feel like I finally am like showing them how it feels, you know? And it can
Yeah.
be a very vindictive thing, but it's not a healthy thing to do because it's not resolving any conflict. It's literally zero communication, and you need
Yeah, you didn't fix the
communication.
issue. We just didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I grew up with that a lot, and so I think one of the reasons why I went into psychology is to try to understand why we do, but also I grew up around getting the silent treatment, and in working with kids, like I was taught that's the last thing you want to do because this child is trying to connect with you. Like, what did I do? What did I say? Like, I'm
How can I
sorry. Like,
fix it?
what? Yeah, like the child becomes like the one that is trying to problem solve, and the adult, instead of being like, okay, let's work on this together, like let's problem solve, it's like complete shutdown. I'm gonna starve you of love and attention, and yeah, like it's a little. I don't want to say it's a little. It's pretty harsh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, dang, that was deep. That was deep. Okay, so how do you think generational survival affects, I don't know, just the way we talk about. We have a list here. One of them that we talked was immigration. The other one was poverty, racism and machismo, and then the way that shaped our parents and grandparents. We're not going to touch on these all in the same level because we are going to make separate episodes to address each one. So we might go into some that are a little bit deeper, other ones that we like talk about less. But that's because we're going to make special dedicated episodes for those. So
Yeah.
Jen, how do you think just generational survival affected mental health growing up, starting with immigration?
Yeah, so for immigration, in a nutshell, I would say one of the things that I see a lot in my family is being grateful, which is really good, but so much so that if you're trying to aim to be at a higher level, whether it be in your career or your education or getting a better job or so on, so on and so forth, there's this mentality of like, well, just be grateful for what you have. Like, why are you trying to get that far? Like, just be grateful for what you have and take what you need and like keep moving forward, and that's that. And again, gratitude is such a like great tool to be living a whole, or what is the word I'm looking for, like a well-rounded
Also,
and like happy life. But if you're just constantly negating all of the things that you want to do to better yourself, I think that can work against itself because then you might end up getting stuck in a cycle. And then I guess like kind of bringing it back into mental health, I think that can also have the same mentality or like same pattern there where it's like, well, I got by just fine. I had all these hard things happen to me. I came to this country not knowing the language. I worked my butt off. For me, my grandparents, they came here in the 60s. My grandpa, he picked onions in the onion fields, and he had a work visa program that he went through. And so, literally, like blood, sweat, and tears, which is amazing. And I'm so thankful for him doing that and giving my family a chance so that, generations to come can benefit from it. But at the same time, for them, they're like, well, we're good. We're safe. We're financially good. We're safe, like physically. Like, what more do you need? Why do we need to talk about emotions? And I think that can have an effect on mental health and the things that we view on it as a culture.
yeah, wow, I think that's really powerful because I see two things happening. For one, it's like if you play it small, it's like let's play it safe. Like it's just playing it safe. It's like don't reach for too much because like who knows what could happen, like somebody could take it. It's kind of like just play it safe, and that becomes like the survival mechanism of like no, just play it safe, like don't reach for more, just be grateful, just play it safe. And then the other one, when it comes to just immigration, like both of us have our story, the way that we both wound up in the US because of our families. So I'm first generation. My dad was born in the States, but most of his life he spent in Mexico until we moved. And like I spent most of my life here. But my upbringing was a little bit different because I do see like the sharp contrast of like what life in Mexico was like and what life in the US was like. And then having that struggle of like moving to a different country, trying to speak the language, and I think when you're just trying to make ends meet, you don't think about reaching for more. You just think about surviving and just feeding your family, which kind of goes into like the next topic of like poverty. But I mean, Yeah, I think as a whole, I think just socioeconomically, the Hispanic population sometimes, I don't want to say all because I don't want to like overgeneralize, and I think people will come along with that, but oftentimes they tend to be like lower income. And so there is some sort of like message of like poverty. I think I can speak for myself, like growing up, there were times where we didn't have enough money, or like I knew when we were doing really well, like we had like more meat, more chicken, more protein kind of like foods at the home or like even dairy, like milk, things like that. And when we didn't, we tended to have like more tortillas, more beans, more rice, more carb driven foods that were cheaper and you can like make in bulk. And I remember hearing like, oh, like ahorita no hay dinero, like there's not enough money for that. Or like I wanted, especially growing up into my teen years, I wanted to like get makeup like eyeliner, and it's like, well, do you want to eat or do you want to get makeup? And it was like, well, darn, I didn't know those were my choices. And I was kind of like, well, I could like, I'd not eat for like a day or two, and like, would we be okay? Just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you have any similar stories to that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really lucky. I don't think I never had any conversations like that. I know my mom had, and again, this kind of, we're going to touch on this a little bit later, and like how Val and I have very similar, like, experiences that have crossed over. But my mom definitely had that kind of conversation with my grandpa and my grandma. For me, while we weren't well off growing up, like I grew up in a mobile home and then later on we moved to an apartment. And then as time went on and with my mom's freaking amazing hard work, she ended up buying a house for herself, which she still lives in to this day. And I'm so freaking proud of her for doing that on her own. Um, I didn't really need or like I don't know, I just never was in a position where I needed to have those conversations. Like I do remember going to like the grocery store and like wanting a toy or something and then my mom would say no and then I would cry and I just like didn't understand it. But I was very very lucky that I we weren't ever to that point where I like needed to hear those words of like, well, do you want this or do you want to eat? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do know my family was very resourceful with their money, like rice and beans all the way, a little bit of cheese.
Mhm.
You were lucky if you got
Yeah.
carnita every now and then. Well, not every now and then for me.
Yeah.
I would say I had maybe carnita like once a week or like twice a week, maybe more often as time went on, and then a lot more often as I got to like high school and stuff like that.
Yeah. So like we said, we're definitely gonna touch on some of these next topics a lot later. But the next topics were racism and machismo. We definitely want to talk about those, but this episode is not dedicated to that. I guess I can briefly touch on those. Racism, I think I'm very just lucky and thankful that I did not experience racism in this country, especially where I lived, being near Texas and New Mexico and like south of the border. Hispanic female, it was like, I mean, that was honestly the majority of the population there. So I fit in just fine. I was the majority of the population. However, my brother might have a different story because one time there was a party or it was like he was somewhere and they were looking for a teen male Hispanic and my brother happens to be a teen male and Hispanic. So he's like, it could be that, you know? So I mean, my experience, thank God, has never, I don't think I've ever been discriminated against that I know of. In terms of machismo, I think I've definitely seen that. Again, I'm very thankful for the family that I was born into. I have a lot of very healthy males, but I've also seen some of their friends or unhealthy males in my culture. And I think that's across like every culture. Toxic masculinity in our culture is called machismo. But I have seen that in my family. I think they've done an amazing job of raising sons. But that's all I have to say on that.
And how did that situation end with your brother?
He was my brother. My dad picked him up and like they talked it over with the
Like
cop,
did
and the cop
they took him
apologized.
in?
No, but the cop kind of like made him like stand with him, like it's like you come here, like I'm not letting you go just in case like it is
Oh my
somebody
gosh.
else. Yeah, and so my brother felt like a little reprimanded, like a little punished. What am I doing here? Like I'm not the guy you're looking for. And then my dad went over and like picked him up, and it ended up being like just a misunderstanding. And the cop was very apologetic, like, hey, you know, you have a good kid. Like I'm just trying to do my job. Unfortunately, your son just fits the description in like this very Hispanic populated state that we live in, and I'm looking for a young Hispanic male, and your son is a young Hispanic male. And I guess it was in a bathroom. The situation was like there. It was like a couple of teenagers like either doing drug deals in a bathroom, and my brother just happened to be like
Wrong
wrong place,
place.
wrong
Yeah.
time. Yeah, but I never had those experiences, and so I think again like looking at culture through the lens of like a female versus a male, and now it's completely different because my brother actually because of his like stature, like people be like, "Are you a cop?" And he's like, "I'm not." But even if, so it's like, yeah, yeah. So
How
it's
the tables
funny.
have turned.
People have turned. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so again, we're going to touch on these two topics much deeper in some future episodes, but for the racism topic in regards to this question, that's actually kind of interesting. And I wanted to ask you this because as you were explaining, it kind of made me curious. Have you noticed a difference between New Mexico and Washington State? For those who don't know, that we're from New Mexico.
Yeah, yeah. So two girlies from New Mexico. New Mexico, show us love and subscribe. But we're both from New Mexico. Currently, I am in Washington. I will say, I think there's not a lot of tan people up here. So I think when people see me, they naturally assume I'm native, actually. So
Mm,
they assume I'm Native American, and so they'll ask me. But they're also like, "Are you Native? Are you something else?" So they're mostly curious. I
mm,
wouldn't say that I face like discrimination, but they can definitely tell I'm not from here, so they will ask.
yeah,
But I like welcome it. I
yeah,
guess, and this was something that I was thinking about, and we can definitely go in depth at some other point. But I wouldn't necessarily say like racism or like nationalism, but people in Mexico, like my family in Mexico, they don't see me as Mexican. They're like, your parents are Mexican, your family, like you have Mexican origins, like your parents, but you're not Mexican. And so it's like it feels like a like
you're taking my card away.
like yeah. And then here in the States is like I do feel American. I am American. I'm Mexican American, but it's kind of like, girl, you Mexican, and I'm like, well, I guess like I lived there for a bit, so yeah, like
Yeah,
they don't love me though like that.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Mr.
so I don't know.
Quintanilla was right. You got to be more Mexican than Mexicans, more American
Yeah,
than the
more American
Americans.
than the Americans. Yeah, so we're working double time here.
Yeah. Yeah, so I will say I'm like really, really lucky. I don't think I've ever had any like racial or racist charge experiences or anything like that. I lived in New Mexico pretty much my whole life, and then once I turned, let's see, 20? Yeah, 20. That's when I went on the Disney College program, which we talked a little bit more about that on the last episode, so if you're curious. And so I moved to Florida. So that was back in like 2017. And then I lived in Florida. Well, I did two Disney College programs, so I kind of went back and forth between New Mexico, Florida. Lived in North
Hmm.
Carolina for one semester, never really had any bad experiences there. Lived in Florida again for 5 years. And because there's so many Latinos there, it was actually really easy for me to like blend in. One of the things that I love about Florida actually is that it's like a giant melting pot, truly. There's Cubans, there's Venezuelans, there's Puerto Ricans, there's Haitians, there's Moroccans, like so many different cultures there. And everyone that I met was like genuinely nice. Now that I'm here in Tennessee, I again haven't had any experiences myself. However, I have unfortunately seen and heard of some really negative experiences, specifically with Black people, and it does make me really sad because obviously that's just not a good thing that we need to deal with. I think that for me, that's something I have to be a little bit vigilant about just in case. But I also don't want to let it like taint my viewpoint. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to go out
Hmm.
looking for bad things to happen. So I try to
Yeah.
have kind of a balanced approach on it. I got a little bit off on a tangent there, but to answer the question, I would say the role that racism plays in how Latinos show up for emotional health, I think it can obviously it negatively impacts us because there are a lot of us who may have grown up in different parts of the country like I don't know, like the Midwest or the Bible Belt, and they have probably had some really bad experiences. And then the other conversation goes into colorism, which that is also a
Hmm.
problem in a lot of Latin countries. And so again, these
Yeah.
are topics that we're going to have to do a whole episode on because obviously we have a lot to say. But there's my answer to that one. And then the last one is machismo. Yeah, that one I see It's like such a big thing. Like, again, people are just so much more comfortable expressing anger, and then that can cause other problems like domestic violence or just violence in general. And it's really sad to see. Like, these are things that people need tools. They really need tools to be able to handle their emotions, to manage them, to process them so that they can go out into the world and be the best version of themselves. And instead of people being open enough to do that, they are so scared of diving deep into what's really going on inside of them that they would just rather mask it and avoid it. And then it ends up manifesting in other really negative ways. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So now into our personal journeys. This one, and I'm reading on the script, you guys, because I will get sidetracked.
As you
But
can see,
just our
we got
personal,
sidetracked
yeah,
entirely.
our personal journeys for school, in psychology. Why maybe now we have the understanding that we do. If it makes sense that we went into psychology. I don't know, just any thoughts. How did studying psychology challenge or confirm what you experienced growing up in the Latino culture? And do you feel like academia helped you understand Mexican culture or not? I don't know, Jen. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so for me personally, I don't think that it necessarily helped me too much to understand my experiences as a Latina, but
Okay.
just because like a lot of the classes I was taking were they were a lot of them, sorry, my brain is catching up with my mouth. A lot of them were very focused on definitions, like the anatomy of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and I took an abnormal psychology class which discussed different mood disorders. And so just kind of like learning what the signs are behind that. I would say, if anything, my childhood development class probably gave me more insight into my family dynamic, which is a common class for those who are going into teaching. I
Mm-hmm.
took it like I think it counted as my like towards my psychology degree, but it wasn't like a requirement. Like it didn't have as much of a weight in terms of the credits that could count for it. And so anyways, I remember learning about the different parenting styles and being like, this one is the one that I grew up with, and this one is the ideal one, and there are some differences here.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I just realized my mic was not on, so forgive me. No, I will also say that I think psychology gave me a good understanding on like what it is and like explain things like psychology of marketing, evolutionary psychology. So I got a really good overall grasp on like what the field is, and like I would say like a good general idea on everything. It wasn't until I stepped into therapy
Same.
that things like clicked. I'm like, oh, I remember learning about that. I'm like, oh, that explains
Hmm.
so much.
Yeah.
So it was like, I guess psychology as studying it was like learning about it. And then therapy was like the application. Like, oh, I'm going through it. Like,
Yes.
I learned about this.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it felt. So, Jen, what made you want to step into conversations about healing? And was there a moment that you felt like, I need to learn these things and maybe talk about these things to help people know where they're at or what they're doing or not doing to help themselves?
Yeah, I would say like when I decided to finally declare psychology as my major, I had so many majors in college. And then I finally was like, you know what? Like, this is something that I am really interested in, that I really do want to learn more about. Like, not just because of the things that I have gone through growing up, but like, I just am curious. I'm just so curious about the human mind. Like, I'm one of those people where if I'm watching a true crime documentary, I am Googling. I am like,
Mm-hmm.
why did Ted Bundy do that? Why did this person do that? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
what was their reaction when they got caught? You know what I mean? Like, I just find that stuff so fascinating and so interesting. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
like one of the reasons why it led me to that major. In regards to therapy, if we're being super honest and raw, I had a really bad emotional episode right before the pandemic happened. And I remember I was like sobbing, and I was out on my balcony and I was freaking out and trying to get like fresh air because I was on the verge of having a panic attack, or sorry, an anxiety attack. And I realized like, okay, I have to do something about this. Like, I cannot procrastinate it anymore. I don't know where I'm going to start looking. I don't know what I need to do to figure out how to get therapy. All I know is I need to make it happen. Like, I cannot wait any longer. And
Mhm.
I did start in 2020, and then I did therapy for about 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly, but somewhere around that time frame. I'm not in therapy anymore, but I'm not opposed to it. I actually, the way that I personally view therapy, which is very different from a lot of people, I kind of think about it as like the gym, but for my brain. So, like, I take
Mhm.
care of my body and I go to the gym every single week, or I try to at the very least. I try to give my body as much nutrient dense foods as possible with the balance here and there of some sweet treats. So why
Mhm.
wouldn't I do that for my brain too? So in the future, I would love to try out EMDR therapy. I find that to
Mhm.
be super interesting. So that's probably going to be what my next venture is. But yeah,
Dang, that was really deep.
sorry.
No, I
I
think
feel
like
like I'm just
no,
yapping.
that was really, really good, and I think it helped me understand a lot and also reflect. So, like Jenny, I always in college I knew I was either gonna do criminal justice, which again was psychology driven, like why did this person do this? What led them to, react like this? What's going on through their mind? More like what is it? What's like true crime kind of thing, which also team I applied for the FBI once if you're listening. Just kidding.
They're missing
But I
out.
applied because yeah, I mean, conscious commodities. We made something out of
Yeah.
psych. But anyway, and then while I was an undergrad major, I started working as a tech with kids. So I was doing behavioral health, ABA to be specific. And so I was coaching kiddos and teaching them life skills through behaviorism. So it's another field of psychology, but it was more applied. And I was like, I kind of like this. And it was more of a happier field too. Like I was working with kids and I was like, I actually really enjoy this. And so the criminal justice kind of went out the window a little bit more just because I was doing something, I was getting paid, I was getting hands-on learning. I was like, I really like this. I was watching kids thrive
Hmm.
and I loved it so much. And then again, like this just goes back to like conditioning. Like I was taught to like welcome and express really happy thoughts and really happy feelings. But
Hmm.
when I started to like feel anxious, whether that's because of school, and again, I grew up being an athlete, so like I just felt like I was like fearless and I could take on the world. But there was particular things that I couldn't control. For example, knowing that one of my clients, the mom was like in like an abusive relationship, and I was getting like a call from my kid, hey, are you gonna be here today? Like I'm a little stressed out. Like feelings of like I can't do anything to control the situation. Like oh my gosh, like what am I gonna do? I have to be there later. Like I'm a little stressed. Like not knowing how to cope with that, and like understanding like oh my gosh, this is anxiety. I've never felt this feeling before, and I don't know what to do about it. And that was like I'm recognizing this is what's going on, and then I don't know what to do about it. So trying to understand my family. That was one reason why I went into psychology. Just understand the world around me, and then trying to understand myself. And then also in coaching kiddos, one of my kids one time she said like, "Oh, Miss Val, I wish everybody had like a teacher like you." And I was like, "Dang, like I think all of us need a coach." And I think at that time I was for coach and for tech, and I needed my therapist too. That was my coach at that moment of like, okay, Val, we gotta give you these tools. And then I was like, I think everybody could benefit from these tools. So
Yeah.
that kind of goes hand in hand with this podcast, and like we're just trying to help and share our
Right.
experiences and help someone.
Right. And so actually one question well, okay, hold on. I'm going to hold that question. I want to say this real quick
Mm-hmm.
before I forget. In this episode, we're going to talk a lot about talk therapy, but I do want to remind people there are other methods of therapy. There's art therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I earlier discussed EMDR, which is, I hope I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying that right. EMDR? EDMR? No, yeah, not EDMR. Love EDM. ED, EMDR, I don't remember what the letters stand for, but it's basically this technique where there are two lights or like lights that kind of go back and forth and you track the eyes. And sometimes you'll have like bilateral sound going on in headphones that you have that's going along with the lights. So you'll hear like a sound on the left and then a sound on the right and it just goes back and forth. And as you are exposed to the lights and the sound, whoa, sorry, my water bottle fell. As you're exposed to the lights and the sounds, you're talking about some negative things that have gone on in your life with a therapist. And your brain is like literally rewiring your neurons and like how you relate to the negative experiences that you had in your life. So much so to a point where you eventually get to like a neutral place and you're not so scared or like sad to talk about those things anymore. So again, that's one of the ones that I would really like to explore in the future. But
Mhm.
other ways that you can, take care of your mental health without actually having to do talk therapy, you could do art therapy. I think I said that already. You could just go work out, get endorphins in. You could journal. Like there's so many different techniques. And so just because we are advocating so much for therapy and for traditional talk therapy doesn't necessarily mean that's the one for you. We're just saying in this episode to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing I was going to ask you though, like going way back to being a behavioral technician, can you explain to
Hmm.
those who may not know what ABA stands for?
Yes, so ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And basically, it's taking research of behaviorism, of just like how to modify and change behavior, and how to apply that. And so it's basically like how to apply that to a population of kiddos with autism. So ABA, you can see that in like airport security, like the way they tell you like take off your shoes, take off your belt, things in this bin, walk through, like that's ABA. The way canine units, like, okay, we're gonna train these dogs and this is what they're smelling, and every time they smell this and every time they find this, they're gonna get a huge reward, and that's how they know, like, this is exactly what I need to smell so I get my reward. So there's a lot of ways that ABA is done to us, even like a rewards card. Like every time you shop with us, you
Mm,
get reward points, and that's supposed to like reinforce like shopping more. It's like spend more of your money, and we'll give you gifts.
yeah.
So like ABA really is everywhere. It's being done to us. We try to use it to help children with autism to be more independent. And it's based on their goals and the goals that parents and children come up for themselves and how we can help. So ABAs can sometimes get a bad rep, but ABA done right is about the individual's needs and the individual's wants versus like Miss Val feels like her kiddo should be more social, so she's gonna take him to the park. It's like, well, if that kiddo wants to be more social and that's one of her skills, then we'll work on it. If it's like, no, Miss Val, I don't really care, I wanna like work on other stuff. It's like, well, like
Tailoring
that's
it
like
to their
we have
needs.
to listen. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to abide by like our ethics, and it's like child's wants first, and like what the parents want for their child.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love
Okay.
that. Awesome.
Thanks.
All right.
Um,
Sorry, you go ahead.
Okay, so how has our friendship influenced the way we talk about healing and emotions?
Yeah. So I don't know about you. Oh, actually, do you want to go first? Sorry.
I made a few notes on things that we wanted to talk about, and one of the things that we talked last time was reframing. Also, just listening and like listening with intent of like, okay, do you want to just listen, or should we like strategize, or like how can we be proactive about this? And then also how we relate to each other of like me being a first generation and seeing a lot of Jenny's mom's like side and like point of view, and like, oh, like I kind of grew up the same way like your mom did, and then Jenny being like a second generation, and like our friendship and kind of like those dynamics.
Yeah. That's like one of the things that I've said pretty often to Val is like sometimes the things that she talks to me about and like the experiences that she's lived, I'm like, oh my God, that's like literally my mom to a T. And I've always like been curious if my mom was my age, like would we be friends? And I think we would be best friends. So like having a best friend in Val, I feel like is kind of a little like validifying of that because I don't know if that's a word, validifying, validating, because she is a first generation American and she has faced a lot of the same issues that my mom has. So then it also kind of gives me, I guess, kind of like a cathartic experience listening to Val talk about some of those things because I'm getting to know on a closer level and see it firsthand in front of my eyes how some of these things manifest. And like being able to have more empathy for that and like have more empathy for my mom because once I see it in front of my eyes, it's a little bit easier for me to kind of like process those things emotionally.
No, I would completely agree. So I think one of the ways like psychology has helped us is coaching each other through things, and not necessarily being like each other's therapists, but like coaching each other through like, yeah, like just in our friendship, we'll just talk about our day or things that happen. And then just reframing some of our experience, like, girl, like, how can you frame that? And being like, you're right. Like, I'm not gonna let this bad thing or bad day get the best of me. Like, what things did happen, or just doing a lot of that reframing. Also, just learning how to listen. I really do think that's a skill. Sometimes people just listen to respond or rebuttal or like just talk back. And I do think listening is a skill. So just even the way that we're talking, just Jenny has amazing listening skills.
Thank
So
you.
it's really amazing to talk with her because I always feel heard. That's one thing. I always feel heard in this friendship.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, sometimes just talking with Jen, I have met Jenny's mom and I think the world of her. And I do see a lot of myself in her. And I think sometimes the reason why therapy wasn't like something that they talk about or explore, I think maybe it's just like it wasn't available to them or it wasn't something that was encouraged for them. And now they're boomers. They're boomers and they're like, if I didn't do it when I was a teenager, why would I do it now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think just age, like where they're at in their age, like it just wasn't something that was approached to them. And then also like in our culture, like it's not something that they grew up with. So yeah, just seeing a lot of like myself and Jen's mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I can't remember, there was something that you said in there that I wanted to respond to, but I lost it. So hopefully it comes back to me. But I think everything you said was very, very good. I guess I remember. It was going back to the good listeners. One of the things, and Val is a great listener too, but one of the things that I think plays a role in our friendship when it comes to emotional or like emotions and psychology is Val is very non-judgmental. Like I have said some crazy things in this friendship, and I'm sure in the back of her head she was like, I don't know about that one, but she's like, okay, let's understand, let's break that down. Like, and I just never feel judged. So like I just have to say that's like something that I think is really, really, really great for our friendship.
Yeah, what's that they said? We listen, we don't judge.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we always abided by that rule.
Yeah. So now we are on survival versus healing. So Jenny and I just like burst into laughter when we went over this question. But it was like, what does survival mode look like in your community? And there's like a checklist, and it's like working multiple jobs, never resting, being strong, ignoring pain, silence around trauma. And we were just laughing, and we were like, oh man,
We're
what a
like,
way of being
are
called
we
out.
are we surviving? Is that what's happening right now? We're stuck in survival mode. And then
Survival.
the next
Oh my
question,
god.
what was the next question? I can't remember. Let me go
What was
back.
the moment when you caught yourself in survival mode and had to pause? We were like, now, today.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we're being
Subscribe
called
so we're
out.
no
It's
longer
okay.
survival.
So yeah, which honestly, I think it's okay. Like I think it is okay if you are find yourself in survival mode. There's also like seasons of life too. Like you're not always
Yeah.
going to be like in a perfectly thriving scenario. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, Val and I are both working multiple jobs. We're trying to make a name for ourselves. We're trying to not just in terms of, the things that we're putting out into the world like this podcast, but also we both, well, Val passed her real estate exam. She hasn't
Yeah.
gotten her license yet, but she's working on it, and I got my license back in May. Val's also doing all kinds of projects. Again, shout out to Deep Naked Thoughts. If you haven't listened to that podcast, go listen to the podcast. But yeah, we're like busting our butts trying to like get somewhere and do things for ourselves. So it's okay that we're working multiple jobs, but at the same time, I think it is important for us to remind ourselves that it's okay to prioritize rest because we're just
Yeah.
human beings. Like you cannot go forever like that. It's not gonna work
Yeah.
out if
It's
you
not
know.
sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just to speak for the Hispanic culture, and I was telling my husband this, but I was just saying, like, I have never seen a lazy Mexican, and I'm kidding because I'm pretty sure I have, but I think our people work really, really, really hard to the point where like they do work multiple jobs, and that's not necessarily wrong. Again, Jenny's right. This is a season, not a lifetime. I don't want to work multiple jobs forever, and I know what my end goal is, and I want to be a creative full time. And if I have to work really hard at the beginning to get there, like so be it. But yeah, I think our community just works really hard. So much so that I think that's another reason why they haven't addressed mental health. It's like they've just been busy working. And I actually had a talk with my therapist one time, and she was talking about when people have that realization of trauma, or why like trauma tends to come to us like sometimes in our 20s. And she said that our brain is so busy trying to get through finals and trying to get through prom and trying to get through like all of the things that you have to do in your day, that it never has time to process. And it's not until later when you're like, for example, COVID, when we just like were, we just sat down and we're like, what do we do when we had nothing but time, that you start to like, oh, I remember that time when this thing happened, and you're like, oh my god, you're like, oh.
Like,
And then
wait,
you're
that
like,
wasn't okay.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like sometimes we are in such survival mode, and your brain is like trying to survive and live, that when you finally get to like a place where it can relax, it's like now it's time for us to dump everything you did in the dress, and you're just like, I was not ready for that. Like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways, my mom is still in some ways still in survival mode, and I think she wants to in some ways operate in that way because she doesn't want to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
And I know at some point, I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for Val. I would oftentimes use work to cope and like not feel my feelings, or at least the negative feelings. And it wasn't until like the last job I was with that I just didn't like it and I didn't enjoy it. But I was like, I can't run to work because now I'm running away. Like now I'm like, I don't even want to do this.
Yeah.
That everything like added up, and I was just like, I had to feel all of it, not just like one thing. Like I had to feel everything that I didn't want to feel. So,
Yeah.
dang.
Yeah. And you know what though? I think it's important to remind ourselves that the change that we want in our own mental health and in the way that our culture relates to mental health, it's going to take some time. Like, you're not perfect. You're not going to change overnight. It's not that easy, unfortunately. Emotional work is hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but it is so worth it in the very long run. When you're in the middle of it, it's not going to feel that way. But once you get closer and closer to, or just like further in time, I should say. I don't, there might be a finish line for some people when it comes to therapy. Some people enjoy having therapy for the rest of their lives, and that is okay. But regardless, as you progress further throughout time, I think it's important to know that eventually you will see those changes happen and you will see a more positive and healthy pattern when it comes to your mental health. So, yeah, so let's see here. What is our next question?
Oh, I guess one last thing on like
Oh, yeah.
what Jenny was saying. One of the reasons that I don't want to say so terribly, but one of the reasons that also helped me through therapy and wanting to change myself is also like the way I communicated with others. And it's like if I wouldn't say this to a child, I shouldn't say this to myself. If I wouldn't say to a child like get over it, like I wouldn't say that to myself. So a lot of it was reframing a lot of like I don't even just need to change for like myself. The way I treat myself is how I'm gonna treat others. There's this quote, and it's like the relationship with yourself is the most important because it's gonna dictate all of your other relationships. So I was like, if I love myself, if I'm good to myself, if I listen to myself, if I nurture myself, I don't want to say do that for others, but I can treat others well and also do that.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I always say
yeah.
you can't pour from an empty cup. So, as much of
Mhm.
a giver as you want to be, as much as it lights your soul on fire to help other people, you have to give back to yourself. Um,
Mhm.
you like it's so important. And the other thing too is at the end of the day, we all die alone. You know what I mean? So it's like you only have one life. You owe it to yourself to try and give yourself the best experience here on earth as you possibly can. So like why not, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So our next segment, and we've already touched on a few of these things. This actually talks more about culture. So it's culture, stigma, and breaking the cycle. So why do you think there's still a stigma around therapy, and especially in Latino
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about machismo already. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
have any thoughts to add on that.
Sir.
Yeah, I think we kind of, and again, we'll have a full episode on it. So, one of the things, one of the things that I mentioned whenever we were going over these questions before we started filming was our history. Well, I would say this is going to apply more to Mexican history because that's what our culture is. So there might be some parallels in other countries or people who are from countries that might be listening to this podcast. But for us, obviously the Spaniards took over, they colonized us, and they forced Catholicism on a lot of our people, so much so that they could not practice at all anything to do with our native roots. And I think as time has gone on, each generation got it a little bit easier, which is good. That is how it's supposed to go. You're always going to want your children to do better than you. But I think there
Mm-hmm.
can also be some resentment with that. So I think personally, from what I've experienced myself, I see a lot of boomers. It seems like they're resentful of millennials and Gen Z who are wanting to have the conversation about mental health. And in their head, it's like, well, I didn't have anything to do with my mental health. I didn't prioritize it. I didn't talk about it. I just worked hard. Like, just do what you need to do and cope, and that's it. So why do you feel the need to talk to it? Especially because you didn't even suffer as much as I did. When I came to this country, times were so different, or when your grandparents came to this country, times were so different. Like, what do you have to complain about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is important for us to know those roots and to know that history so that we can empathize with our ancestors because what they went through was freaking awful. But at the same time, I think it's okay for us to acknowledge some of the struggles that we go through. And just because we want to talk about it doesn't, like, I'm sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings from the older generations because I know that they didn't prioritize it. We want to do better because of what I talked about earlier. We should always want to do better. We should always want to progress. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion, but
No, that was really, really good. So I think in hearing you talk about it, I feel like I had a conversation like that with my mom. It's like, well, you don't even have it bad. Like, you had it easy compared to like what your dad and I had to go through. And like she started talking about it, but it comes from like anger. It's like I had to like learn a whole different language, leave my family. Like I had to work like harder than I would have had to work in Mexico just to make money so that we would have like food to eat. And like she was inadvertently talking about her feelings, even though she's like, I don't want to talk about my feelings. She was talking about her
right.
feelings, and then approaching it from a place of compassion, being like, Mom, like I love you, and like I'm sorry that it was hard
Yeah.
when we first moved here. Like it sounds awful, and I'm sorry that you didn't have like the experience you thought you were gonna have. Like I also didn't have that experience. Like instead of making friends, I was trying to learn how to like speak this new language instead of like making friends, I was trying to like not fall behind in schoolwork because I didn't understand. So it
Right.
was I feel like I connected with her when I showed her empathy of like this is why it matters. And
Right.
like I'm sorry that you had a bad experience. Like it's taking us a while to like make a life here. And I'm sorry it was hard in the beginning. And so yeah, like as opposed as like she was to it after talking about it, she's like, oh, wow, like I actually just talked about my feelings and like
Mhm.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
I feel better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like
Can't do
having
anything about
those
it, but
heart to hearts, and it's like sometimes they get angry because again they feel resentful and they're like, "Well, I don't understand like why do you think that you need to do this? Like why do you need so much in order to just feel better?" And it's like that's the wrong question. The question isn't like why do I think that I need to do this in order to get to that solution? The question is like what are the ways that you were not helped and how can you help yourself now so that we can both start doing better, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah.
And it's wonderful that you were able to cope for so long and you have made it so far without needing to have those tools. Like that is great. You are such a strong person and I want to acknowledge that too because that is freaking hard work, you know what I mean? But again, it's there's some things that are healthier when it comes to coping than there are, other things, like it's
Yeah.
like putting a band-aid over a bullet wound. Like it might help in the long
Yeah.
run, or sorry, not the long run. It might help at the beginning when it comes to stopping the bleeding a little bit, but eventually you're going to have to go in with some tweezers, take that bullet out and stitch it up,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, how do culture, faith, and tradition sometimes help and sometimes hold us back? Jenny and I made notes for this, and in doing it, I think there was like a lot of beautiful things. So we came up with comfort and community, just like community being such a like thing that we prioritize in Latin culture. So we put posadas, fiestas, church,
Yeah.
also having a multifaceted approach to faith.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, as people who are no longer living in their home state, I think that is really comforting too, because we don't get to
Mm-hmm.
experience it in the places that we live now.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I am lucky because right now, my side job that I do, there are a lot of Hispanic people. So I've been able to like practice Spanish and I've been able to like relate to them and like feel like I have a sense of community. But that wasn't always the case. I have lived here in Tennessee for over a year now and it has felt really isolating. So being able to go back home and like have those comfort foods and have those little events and catch up with family and friends, that is something that I think is really important to acknowledge when it comes to the positive aspect of how our culture has helped us with mental health. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
Val, sorry, I interrupted you if you want to take it back over.
No, 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 you're good. And then that multifaceted approach, because we are mixed, regardless if, like, for example, I lived in Mexico and my parents were Mexican. Like, we're mixed. Like, our culture is mixed. Like, we're mixed with indigenous, we're mixed with Spanish. I'm mixed with Spanish and Italian and also Native. And so I was talking to Jenny of just this multifaceted approach to faith and how, whenever, like, the Spanish colonized Mexico, their ways of worshiping we're a lot more about like worshiping the earth and worshiping the animals and worshiping nature and actually being really in tune with yourself and your feelings and like the tribe. And then the Spanish were like, nah, none of that. Like,
Yeah.
And so it's also like healing a lot of like generations of like, no, don't do that. Like, that's wrong. Like, it's only this way. You can only pray like this. Like, I don't know, Jen, if you have any thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, again, when we were talking about what we wanted to discuss in this episode, something that I brought up was that, that experience is going to vary a lot from family to family just because there are some Hispanic families who are just non-denominational Christian. There are some who maybe are atheists. There are some who are strictly
Mm-hmm.
Catholic.
Yeah.
And then there are some that kind of blend the two together, like Santeria, where it's like people who practice Santeria, they do have a lot of Catholic roots in there, but they also
Mm-hmm.
maintain a lot of their native roots where they're working with herbs, they're working with the earth, they're, utilizing the tools that we have here on earth. And unfortunately it's a shame that, whenever the conquistadores came over, that they really drilled and focused on the conversion of our people to some really awful extents, including torture. But so much so that it like demonized that too. It's like, well, if you're like working with the earth, then that means you're worshiping earthly possessions, or like you're, like that's wrong. Like that's the devil's work to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And in my head, I just think it's kind of funny because I'm just like, well, God gave us this earth. So, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the important thing here is kind of reminding ourselves that it's okay to worship how you want to worship,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what works best for you. If you want to take bits and pieces from different practices, different religions, different ways to help you in your own faith, but also kind of tie that all into mental health, whatever works for you works. You know what I mean? Kind of going
Yeah.
with that approach and not making it so black and white. Like it doesn't have to be as black and white as we make it out to be.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. Let's see. How can we honor our families? Okay, how can we honor our families where they come from and still healing work that they didn't have access to? So I think we kind of already talked about that, like the no contact. I don't know if you have more thoughts on that. Meeting them where they're at. Actually, Jenny had a lot of thoughts on this, and she had a lot of really good things. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
let her lead.
Yeah. So, really briefly touching before we kind of get into like the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about, I do want to say like every situation is different. So if you are at a point where maybe you're like no contact with your family, or you've had like so much awful conflict that you've already kind of made your peace with that and you're like moving forward, this next part of the conversation might not be for you, and best of luck to you because that is really freaking hard. But let me go back to my notes here. Meeting your family where they're at. So because a lot of them are maybe not as open to the conversation about emotions or mental health or therapy, just plant little seeds as you have conversations with them. Don't expect them to change overnight. Don't expect them to be fully in touch with their emotions or just like not be a logical person overnight, because a lot of people who are not in touch with their emotions, they kind of lean towards the logical side. But just planting seeds here and there and reminding yourself that it takes time. Like nothing is going to change in a heartbeat. Nothing is going to change overnight. And also, I guess in our culture too, we could say the same thing. I think a lot of us get really frustrated because we want our parents or our grandparents or our tios to really understand why this is important. And then we get caught up on the fact that they're just not there yet. But whenever you look back on just like 10 years ago and you like say you're watching a movie or something, or you're listening to a podcast from 10 years ago or whatever the case may be, and you're hearing these like weird jokes that are being said that are slightly offensive, or you're hearing like just things that were so different back then in comparison to where we are now, you're like, dang, a lot of change has happened. There's a lot more opportunities for Latinos in Hollywood now. Again, like we're getting away from the offensive things that we've seen in movies like back in the day, where when it comes to like stereotyping and things like that. And it's such a great
Mhm.
reminder of the fact that like we are all people, you know what I mean? And that change is happening. It's taking a little bit longer than what we would want, but it is happening and it is effective. And so just being patient with that, I think, is kind of the biggest thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with a lot of the things that Jenny is saying. And there's a lot of movements to like, okay, yes, every country has things that they might not do so well or that are wrong or that are working for them. But what about our culture or our cuisine or our art? And it's just like, let's lead with purpose and like, let's also showcase all of the beautiful things we have and that we're doing. So I see that. And then, especially for my mom, I feel like it's taking her a lot of time, but I think she does see the benefit in, I don't want to say in therapy, but like talking to someone once in a while, especially when she was trying to like understand herself, my brother. I don't, this is really personal, but when my brother got cancer, like she really like needed to talk to someone and like how am I a mother and a spouse, and like how do I go about this? Do I ask him how he's feeling? Do I just do things for him? Like kind of like acts of love. It's like service of, what is it? Acts of service. Like do I just do things for him? Do I just tell him I love him? Like she had to figure out like how to be a mother all over again, and she had to go to therapy for it, because, or at least talk to someone about it, because she'd never been in that situation, and
Yeah.
she yeah. But that's where she was at, and she was ready, and she needed help, and so she's like, I need to talk to someone, I need to figure this out. But if they're not ready, then it's kind of like trying to help someone that doesn't want to be helped.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a well, by the way, Val's brother is okay. He is thriving actually.
Oh yes, I love Jenny. Jenny is great because I think I say things and then I don't finish them, and Jenny's
The
like, we gotta
listeners
go
are
back
like,
to
"Wait,
this. Just
rewind. Her brother had cancer?
yeah,
What?"
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
no,
He's
he's
fine. He's doing
thriving.
better.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say though? You said something about so like meeting them where they're at, and then that
Mhm.
reminded me of something I was gonna touch on. Shoot, I can't remember. It was kind of similar to what I said about like planting seeds and stuff like that for people. And like I can't remember what I was gonna say, but I was gonna say something along the lines of that again, and just like how important it is to like just give them little chunks of things that they could hold on to when it comes to mental health, because it can be so overwhelming. And like when you're just okay, sorry, I remember what I was going to say. It was about when they're ready. Sometimes we'll have these conversations with like our family members and talk about, yeah, like therapy is really great. And while that might sway somebody in your family to want to try it
Mhm.
out for themselves. One thing that my
Mhm.
therapist told me is that you would be surprised how often that actually doesn't work. They're going to go when they're ready. They're going to have to want it more than you want it. you know?
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
okay. Like, your job is not to fix everybody. Your job is to take care of yourself. You know what I mean? So if there is
Yeah,
somebody in your family
absolutely.
who you do think would benefit from it, don't push them in that way of like, you need to do this, you need to go to therapy, or like, have you ever thought about therapy? You need to let them live their life, go on. If it comes up in conversation about how therapy is positively affecting you, talk about that. That might,
Yeah.
help out with the situation. Be honest about that. But don't push people who are not ready because it's just not going to work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we are in our final thoughts. What does healing look like, especially through the Latino lens? So we made a list of a few key items. Jenny brought up mirror work, which I think is great. Asking for more. So instead of just working hard, work smart. So ask for a raise. Reclaiming traditions, therapy, spirituality, community, church, Latin dance, posadas, and storytelling. Okay, let's start with mirror work. Jenny had a really good idea for this one.
Yeah, so something that I say pretty frequently is if to go look at yourself in the mirror. If you cannot look at your own eye in the mirror and sit there with yourself for 5 seconds without starting to get uncomfortable and look away, you probably need to do some inner work. And that's okay because I've been there too. There have been plenty of times where I've looked at myself in the mirror and like, I cannot like hold that gaze. Like, it's just weird and uncomfortable. Bonus points if you're able to get to the point where you can say, I love you to yourself. And again, if that feels uncomfortable for you, then you got to do some work on yourself. And I think the key thing as we progress through all of these little bullet points that we have here for tangible ways that the Latino community can benefit or improve their mental health, the biggest thing is remembering your worth. And that's why that mirror work is so important because you are worthy. You are a human being. You're God's creation. I don't, whether you're religious or not, you are a magical miracle that is here on this earth with crazy
Yeah,
freaking odds. So you owe it to yourself to have a good experience here on this planet and take care of yourself, like you are worth it. So don't say to yourself like, "Oh, who am I to do all this? Who am I to get a raise? Who am I to have a good career? Who am I to do this or that?" Who are you not to? Like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
just go for it. Just go for it. Remember your worth. Remember that you do not have to perform to like validate your worth. Your worth is already innately in you. So, I think that's one of the biggest things.
yeah. Asking for more, I put ask for a raise. Instead, like again, working multiple jobs or just work hard, work harder, and like you can't like outgrind Mexicans. Mexicans always work hard. Like yes, I love that, and I love that for my people, and I love that for like I don't want to say like our model, but I love that for our culture. Like we are hard workers, but also like we gotta work smart. Like instead of like always being the ones working construction, it's like okay, how do we own the buildings? Like work smarter, not harder. And also like what Jenny was saying, like tie it back to self worth. Like you should ask for more, and you do deserve more, and you shouldn't always have to work multiple jobs. It's like you can work and be paid what you're worth.
Yeah. Yeah, like putting that
The
faith in
next one,
yourself.
yeah. The next one we have is reclaiming traditions, and I think both Jenny and I have thoughts on this one. But it's like don't lose your traditions and speak Spanish. Personally, I was raised in Mexico for a few years, so my Spanish was very, very strong. But still, coming into New Mexico, even though it's like very Spanish driven or Hispanic driven, I didn't want to speak Spanish because I wanted to fit in so badly. I just didn't want to speak Spanish. And now as an adult, I have to make a conscious effort to speak Spanish or practice it. Otherwise, like, it's hard for me. And also, like, to anybody listening in New Mexico, they get to benefit from this really rich culture because I've met a lot of Caucasian people with, like, oh, I understand a little bit. And, like, they actually understand a lot. It's like they're bilingual, it's just they don't speak enough. But I'm like, nah, like, you could be fluent if you practice. And it's just like, how cool is that? That even if it's not their culture because they're so in it, like, you understand so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of just piggybacking off of that, my personal like little answer to that specific bullet point, it was kind of funny, but I think it's so true and it's so beneficial is like one of the things I love about our culture is how we approach music. Like music is so funny. but it's like such a vibe. Like you'll be like
It is a
talking,
vibe,
like
yeah.
the guy on the song is talking about how this girl broke his heart and he doesn't know what he's ever gonna do with her again. But for tonight, he's gonna dance. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah,
cumbia beat, like over the lyrics, and they're just talking about the
yeah,
most depressing stuff. So it's like lean into that, you know what I mean? Like that's okay. Like it's okay to celebrate life and to be funny and
yeah,
like not take yourself so seriously. And that is one of the things that I think we should keep in our culture that has been really beneficial to us. I mean, generations of people have survived through that, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
yeah, that's beautiful. Community, church, Latin dance, posadas. One of the things that Jenny and I both have in common is we started doing Latin dance. And I think especially moving away from home is like having that background in like dance and how you said music, connecting to our culture through music and dance. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that or anything you, I don't know, want to leave the audience or share.
Yeah, I mean, dance is really interesting because it is such a primal thing. The funny thing about it too is that it's scientifically proven to help us. Like it helps us get that excess energy out that if we have like any anxiety, that helps to kind of get that out of your system because you're like physically shaking, you know what I mean? So lean into
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, and just like do it in your apartment when no one's looking. Like nobody freaking cares if you're dancing alone in your apartment. Just have fun, dance, like listen to that music, like lean into the thing that makes you Latin and that thing that makes you feel good and feel vibrant and feel life.
Yeah. So, Jen, would your younger self, so this is a two-part, would your younger self be proud of you for the healing that you've done? And would your parents be proud of you for the healing that you've done?
Yeah, so I would say my younger self for sure. Like, I think she would look at who I am as an adult and be so proud, like, of everything that I'm doing, but especially of the emotional work because I am that person who would have stepped in for myself and advocated for myself as a younger person who had, gone through some hardships. So being able to say that as an adult is like really healing for my inner child. I would say my parents, yeah, my dad and we've been open about like talking about emotions in general. I wouldn't say necessarily like our own emotions, but just like emotions overall, just as like curious people who like to talk about psychology. But my dad's white, so we're not talking about that aspect. We're talking about my mom's side, which my mom is Mexican, as I mentioned. At first, I think emotions was not super discussed growing up, but as I talked about earlier, it has gotten a lot more comfortable for us to talk about those emotions. And so even though my mom might not understand why I've gone to therapy and she might not totally agree with the way that I went about my mental health, I think she sees the change now and she is proud of that change regardless of whether it's something that she would have chosen for herself.
I can say it's the same thing. I think my younger self would be very proud that I stay curious about the human mind and understanding. Also, the Greek stuff is saying it's like know thyself. Like, psychology has done that for me. Like I know who I am and I know myself and I'm always learning and growing. There's still room to become more than I am. So my younger self would be so so proud of me. And then my parents, I guess because I went into a helping field and I worked with kids, I saw a lot of myself in kids and a lot of the unresolved problems that I had. And I've been able to help not just kids, but also my family. And even if I wasn't able to help them, just guide them and, like Jenny said, drop those seeds. So I think they would be absolutely proud. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what is one message you want to give the Latino listener who may feel stuck in survival mode?
Yeah, so again, I would say lean into the things that do work for you that are positive, that make you feel more lighthearted and, not taking life so seriously. And then opening yourself up to things that you might not understand. And if you're not ready to completely dive in and do the things or utilize the tools that are going to help you understand that mental health yet because you're just not there, just channeling your curiosity. Like just look it up, Google it, learn about it. You know what I mean? Because the more you learn about it, the more comfortable you become. And then the more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
you become, the less afraid of your own emotions you become. And I think that's where the benefit
Yeah.
lies the most, is just being
Yeah.
naturally curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, like Jen said, there are many ways to heal, and you just gotta find yours. There are many ways to heal. Okay, so Jenny has an exercise for us.
So
Are you ready?
actually, we are already a little bit over on time, so I think I do want to save this for our next episode. But just to kind of
Okay.
give you guys a sneak preview of what that's going to be, on the next episode, we are going to talk about cognitive distortions, which we did briefly touch on the last episode. But the next one that we have coming up, we're going to talk about what those are, how they show up
Mm-hmm.
in your own thinking and your own internal dialogue, and then how they may
Mm-hmm.
show up in your family dynamics and good ways to, or like good alternatives to respond to those
Mm-hmm.
things. So, for example, one of the ones is jumping to conclusions. As we know, a lot of our family members might jump to conclusions. And so, being able to navigate that situation in a much more peaceful way and a much
Mm-hmm.
less abrasive way is going to help everybody
Mm-hmm.
involved. So we want to give you guys those tangible ways to apply that. Also, sorry, I do want to talk about another episode that we do have coming up. We're going to be talking about the concept of ni de aquí, ni de allá. Did I say that right, Val?
Yeah,
Okay.
you said it right.
I'm still learning Spanish, which we'll talk about in that episode. We're going to talk about ways that that has affected us, which are slightly different, but there are some parallels that's affected me versus Val, and so we want to bring that to your attention so that you guys can, I don't know, not find comfort in being able to relate to that because unfortunately it is a sad thing. Which for those who might be listening and don't know Spanish, what that phrase means is like you're not from here or you're not from there. And so it can feel really isolating because if you are somebody who has Mexican descent and you're maybe going to Mexico to travel, or not just Mexican, but whatever country you're from, you go to your homeland and you're so excited to share the culture with all of the family that you have over there. And then they're like, no, like you're American. Like you're not one
Mm-hmm.
of us. And then you come over here and then people will kind of like brush you off to the side over here because they just can't relate to you. So we want to talk about
Yeah.
that and some of the things that we've been through when it comes to those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, that is it, you
Awesome.
guys. But this was episode 2, and I don't know, Jen. Just catch us on the next episode.
Yeah,
I'm
where
bad at
can people
this.
find you, Val?
Okay, you guys. Oh my gosh, it's a lot. So you guys can find me at Deep Naked Thoughts. I try to bring in interesting people to talk with, whether it's leadership or just real life leaders in our community. So Deep Naked Thoughts. And then I will also drop my socials and I'll attach Jenny's socials so you guys can find us, follow us in our regular everyday lives because we are everyday people. But also we are in some really cool projects and building some really cool stuff. So you guys get to see that also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.